Welcome to the Mod Labs podcast, the Mod Debrief.
This is your smart girl's guide to anything branding, marketing, business, and life. So today we have with us an awesome guest. We have Karolina Komarnicka. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So Karolina spent a decade in tech, raising over $30 million and launching industry firsts, including VR training, before walking away to build something that tracks the mind. She now works at the intersection of cognitive performance and personal growth, helping founders and leaders make decisions not from who they are today, but from who they're becoming. All right, so Karolina, you've spent a decade in tech, raised over $30 million, so your abundance energy must be wildly high. And you also launched industry first like VR training, and you pivoted to build something that tracks the mind. So tell us about that journey. How did that start? Why did you shift? Why did you pivot?
So I actually went into corporate straight after business school. I was at Imperial doing my master's. And then within the first month, I got hired in InsurTech, which was not something I ever saw for myself. But I decided to trust the flow and how I was guided. So I did that for about 3 years, and it was pretty much a deep dive into the world of, very much male-dominated industry and everything that came with it, a lot of judgment. So I was determined to prove everyone wrong around me, and I think I showed up in rooms very much acting out a version of me that maybe wasn't fully developed yet, and that really, I would say, served as a springboard for everything that was to come for me in my career. That was that job where I helped raise 36 million equity and debt funding from Rakuten, Draper Esprit, fully with a conviction that is possible without having much experience. And I think that level of being naive is what actually helped me achieve the things that seemed impossible at the time. It was my first job out of university. I was given a lot more responsibility than I was probably ready for. But that leap of faith really set me up for a second job, which was VR learning. So we were scaling enterprise training to Fortune 500 companies. I was a chief marketing officer there. And really helped win people's hearts and minds about this new technology, what it's capable of. And that really taught me a lesson about the importance of finding a champion within an enterprise and really working with people as people and really understanding their belief system and working with that versus treating them as a client and maybe an organization with certain goals and objectives. And I think I've always had this superpower of connecting with really like the intellect and the instincts of a person as opposed to looking at them as a job role. And I think that served me throughout my career very well. But then I think I would say, when I was 28, I lost my partner I was with for 10 years to cancer. And, he was only turning 30. It was very unexpected. And that truly changed my trajectory forever. I had PTSD. I was in therapy for 2 years, really trying to understand why it happened. And at some point, I really had a choice to make. Do I really become a victim of this experience, or do I turn pain into purpose? And it became very clear that my soul wanted to go with the latter. And that's truly became like the mission behind Space of Mind, is helping people through difficult life transitions, helping them understand they have a choice every single day who they become, and they don't have to fall victim of their circumstance. And it's this fire of like being in the depths of despair that I think drives me every single day to help others who might be going through the same.
That's so important. Tell me a little bit about your observations on the narratives we tell ourselves and how that affects their behavior or identity.
So I would say a lot of it is very subconscious, which is why it's so tricky to actually understand why you might be falling into certain patterns. So that's why I really started looking at how can we bring that to surface for people. We already track our glucose, we track our sleep, we're obsessed with optimizing the body, but really the mind is what controls our quality of life, our relationships. And I really wanted to understand how can we give you this information on a daily basis? What are the thought patterns? Really helping you even map a belief system you operate from. Because there is this area of your brain called the default mode network, and it actually narrates your identity based on past experiences. It's basically your autopilot.
Yeah.
So most people end up running on this autopilot without realizing and never really stop to think, what do I have to believe about myself to become who I need to be to achieve the things that I want? So a lot of in the industry focuses on goals and micro habits to achieve those goals, but it really comes down to identity level change to become the person who naturally does all the things that you were already striving to achieve. So it's really a shift in perspective and an understanding. And that really is where it starts. It's just knowing that you need to almost dig deeper into some of the root causes of those struggles. And this usually comes from conditioning from your childhood or any difficult experiences that just made you over-identify with that and make it part of who you are, as opposed to knowing that it's just something that happened to you and you get the choice every single day to go another way. You don't have to fall into the trigger. You don't have to fall into the narrative that you keep repeating yourself just based on something that happened to you.
Yeah, you know, they say it's kind of like a fish in water. They don't know they're in water. Like they think this is just normal until you become really, really self-aware of your environment. But in this case, it's really, really self-aware of the cave of your mind and excavating that cave and understanding what thought patterns are running my mind on a daily basis, because it feels so quiet and normal until you're like, wait, I'm thinking a negative thought that's not serving me, but it feels so comfortable.
And it feels safe.
Why am I not thinking a new thought, right? So tell me about Space of Mind. How does it work? How can someone join it? And that sort of thing.
So Space of Mind, I was researching because the mental health industry struggles with a retention problem. Over 96% of apps in this space get dropped within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So people genuinely have an issue with sticking to a routine of certain type when it comes to their mental training. And I think it comes from the fact that a lot of these tools are static content libraries. So they're actually not personalized to you. They don't meet you where you are. So my first sort of thesis behind this was it has to be personalized and it has to almost catch you at the moment you need the support versus over assuming that this is the journey we want to take you on. So it's really working with the user and almost co-creating that experience based on their cognitive profile. So that was number one, just sort of table stakes for us. And then when it comes to the idea of future self, I was doing some research, and neuroscience actually shows us that your brain treats your future self as a stranger. Someone you
really
have no continuity with, like no relationship with, no obligation to. So no wonder where you have these big goals for yourself and then you fall off. You actually just don't feel you have anything, you don't owe anything to that part of you because it just doesn't feel close. So for me, I was really trying to understand, how do we build a visceral relationship with that part of you daily? Because that's the only way you're ever going to affect change in a real way. So the program, the Future Self Training Program, which is patent pending, has actually been built around that idea, is to help you take one step closer to that part of you. So we clone your voice, so it feels like you're talking to a future you. And then the model is actually trained on all the different modalities of what it actually takes to overcome a limiting belief. And then it tracks your thought patterns, it tracks your limited beliefs, and it adapts daily to the experience that you're having to actually give you a 10-minute a day practice that's split into guided visualization targeted to your goals. There's a daily call with your future self where you actually work through those limiting beliefs. And then there is a reflection stage where you actually get to have a version of a voice journaling where we actually give you a further opportunity to reflect and then give you more analytics in the back end of what you're going through and just more and more data to work with. We also give you an option to actually upload your own coaching sessions and have that analyzed. I think that's also important for more insight.
So great.
And then there's other tools like Decision Simulator. I know a lot of people struggle with making more aligned decisions because, again, it's difficult to know what's best for you if you maybe don't have a clear vision for your future or an understanding of your value system. And we trained a model on about 180 different experiments of how people make decisions. So you can actually go in and then simulate how would your current self make a decision versus the future you on the other side of the pattern. And all those things I built with my own selfish need to sort of really have those tools at hand when I need them. And I know that plenty of other people have the same problem. So Space of Mind really is this cognitive protocol that tracks your thought patterns and then trains out the unhelpful thought patterns with daily calls with your future self.
That is so awesome.
Thank you.
It's also like your future self is coaching you
Absolutely.
in some way.
And
yeah.
you know, it's actually been shown in studies that you trust your voice more than you trust that of a stranger. That is just something that comes naturally to us. So I think there is a lot of cool components we built into this, almost at a structural level, to set you up for success.
All right. So most people make decisions based on who they are right now. And like what you said, they run on autopilot.
Yeah.
But what happens when you start making decisions from the perspective of who you're becoming?
Interesting. So I think first thing that happens is you start to realize just how insignificant some of the choices are that you think are life or death choices. A lot of decisions are actually reversible. They're like type A, type B decisions. And usually, you know, the decisions that you feel are going to define your destiny are rarely truly ones that you can't reverse. So I think when you understand that in a perspective sense, looking from your future self point of view, you see that, you know what, like it isn't as difficult of a decision to make as you thought it might be. So that's number one. It reduces the pressure on you to make the right choice. Because guess what? Even if it's the wrong choice, you do learn, and it's actually part of your process, and it's part of the learning experience. So you always take that as a win. And I think another thing is when you look from a lens of your future self, you get so much more clarity on what you actually want. Because when we make a maybe fear-based decision from a place of scarcity or just not having enough of confidence in what's possible, I think we end up in those places where we're misaligned with the people around us, with maybe jobs that we've taken up, or environments we've put ourselves in, just because we were scared of you know the alternative. But I think if you start seeing that actually, you know, from a perspective of maybe a year or 2 years from now, this is where I want to be, and you almost work backwards and reverse engineer this experience for yourself, it becomes clear, okay, these are the steps I actually need to take. This seems like a logical next step, and you just do it. It becomes very easy to execute. You don't overthink it. It's just clarity comes first. And that's kind of how I stopped overthinking most of the things that I do. I just flow a lot more easily because I have the clarity on the ultimate goal and outcome, and I'm not stressing over the how. I sort of let it happen in the process, and sometimes it's messy, but you know, I wouldn't have it any other way. I think I would rather trust my gut than maybe have a predetermined understanding of what's the right thing to do and then end up unhappy and unfulfilled.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to my therapist about like some thoughts I had, and she said, "Can you try to think of other alternatives?" Or she said a statement like, "Can you say this instead?" which was like the opposite of that thought.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, but that's not possible." Like I came in to stop
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
to convince her that my thought was the truth, right?
Right.
And it's when she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you really believe it, that you cannot even imagine that something else could equally be true." Right? So when she said that, that made me realize how, no pun intended, hard-headed I was
Yeah.
about sticking to a belief that wasn't serving me.
Yeah.
And that it was time to let it go. What I find fascinating here, it's you're talking to yourself instead of a therapist, and starting to see other possible timelines in the future that exist.
Yeah.
That if we just open our mind and let go of past beliefs, those things
Absolutely.
can manifest. Why do you think it's hard for some people to let go of deeply ingrained beliefs?
I think you just touched upon this. The fact that most people don't realize they have a choice over what to believe.
Yeah.
Like we have control of our mind more than we realize. But I think when you maybe don't have enough influences around you to know that, or maybe didn't get a chance to watch people that operate from that perspective,
Like
to
role
see
models.
role models, and just points of inspiration of, oh wow, like, you know, she's actually able to surrender to, you know, maybe her own intuition, as opposed to, you know, doing what seems like the right thing to do. That feels very brave to some people when they watch that, because it might be unfamiliar to them. They feel like they're stuck in this path that they're following, that, you know, maybe from their conditioning, their home, it felt like they were brought up to believe this way. So it's just normal for them. That's just their reality. So until you start, for me, it's like seeing is believing. I always say that. So until you start seeing maybe people operating from a different perspective, or you have your future self to talk to realize there is another path. I think it's very difficult to get yourself out of your traditional way of thinking and operating. This kind of default mode network we talked about becomes difficult to even understand that, like, how is it that I can narrate a different future based on what I believe? You know, it's not a concept that's taught widely yet, even though there are circles where it's becoming very common to talk about, and a lot of social media influencers started talking about this. But I think understanding that is one thing, but then adopting that as how you show up is a very different experience, because like we talked about, it's comfortable to stay in your bubble. It's comfortable not to go out of your comfort zone. But until you realize, like, action like comes first and then belief follows, you need to give yourself evidence of what's possible before you actually truly believe and start showing up as that version of you. Nothing else will move. You need to give yourself this data to work from, to be like, you know what, I can do this is possible, and we can do otherwise. So for me, it's definitely about seeing is believing when it comes to your own track record, but also seeing others as a source of inspiration. So surrounding yourself with people you want to be like more, I think, is one hack to achieving that and accelerating that realization.
And finding the right tribe,
Yes.
finding the right community.
Yes.
That don't shoot your ideas down, like your own mind.
Yes.
I realized that. I said,
Yes.
sometimes I am my own worst enemy with how I talk to myself,
Yes.
or even when I'm thinking out loud or dreaming out loud, sometimes there could be a voice that comes in and it's like, oh, that's not possible. Oh, that's so hard, et cetera, et cetera. And then, the voices in your head are shooting down an idea that your soul actually wants to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it's really being aware of that negative voice, that inner critic, right?
Totally.
And
I think sometimes naming it is also really, really important. Like, give it a name, talk to it, tell it to sit down and calm down when it needs to happen. I think it's actually really important to give it some sort of persona and objectify it a bit, so it doesn't become this invisible force that drives you. It becomes much easier.
So, for example, if there's a voice in my head, I'd say something like, oh, Rachel's here.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone named Rachel, okay? Just the first name I thought of, right? So it just comes in and you identify it, just so that you don't internalize that voice and think it's you.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. Another thing is actually sitting down with a version of you that has that voice still within them. I think for me, there were experiences where I felt a sense of maybe people pleasing, early on.
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, what was important is to actually sit down with that part of myself that felt like I needed to keep doing that, and really integrating that part of me. Like, there's this parts work that's become quite known. I love doing this. I think we need to reintegrate these parts of ourselves we've been rejecting, where we felt like maybe it didn't belong,
the shadow
or
work.
wasn't safe. Yeah, this stuff is really powerful.
It's real.
So when you actually talk to that part of you, you befriend it, it changes the internal dialogue.
Yeah.
But you have to be brave enough to look there. It's not an easy work. It's, there's a lot that comes up. So you have to be in the right headspace. You have to have enough time, because things start coming up afterwards. You have to learn to integrate. But it is powerful to embark on that journey.
So let's talk about, I'm flowing now. Let's talk about the concept of time.
Yeah.
I remember I also had exercises that my coach and therapist, I have two, by the way.
Yeah.
So I talked to different people, and they would always say, it's really important that you also talk to your inner child and you have conversations at what you wanted to hear as a child, right? And that would help with your healing and that sort of thing. This time, thinking forward and our future self talking to us, how do you feel? I have a question, I promise. It's more of, when people are looking for healing and they're talking to their future self, looking for that, how does time work in this? Like, does it happen fast? Does it take time? Like, what is our relationship with that when it comes to their own inner healing?
It's a really interesting question. And I think for me, the important thing for me to realize was that actually it is important to address the past as you're looking towards the future, number one. Like, you might have the best intention of looking forward and pushing for your goals, but until you also look back to that inner child work, to take them along with you, to make them realize they're safe to come with you, and regulating your nervous system to the point where that change feels possible, I think that's number one. So the sense of time of knowing you do need to go backwards when there's things that are blocking you internally, like whether there's like bodily sensations, like maybe tightness in your chest because your body might not feel ready for that change. I think that's important. But I think when it comes to playing with time, for me, I realized it can accelerate your timeline a lot when you realize that it is down to your own way of showing up daily how things get done. Like if you have a belief that things are hard and they take time, they will be hard and they will take time.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Yeah, like if you believe that things are hard to achieve and it will take time for you to get there, this is exactly what you're going to get.
So your beliefs manifest your reality or your timeline.
Exactly. So for me, the way the time comes in here is you can accelerate your timeline to get the things you want based on what you believe and how you show up that reflects that. So this is why, to me, the things I've been doing for the past 6 months with a company would have been impossible when I was like maybe 3 years ago, struggling to even understand how I can achieve the things that I'm dreaming of from a place where I was still dealing with some of those patterns. And they will always show up. It's just how you let them take over. Like you can time your doubt. You can time your negativity. You can make space for it, but not let it dictate your entire week. Yeah. So for me, like just being very clear on what you want to do and then giving yourself that daily practice to train your brain to show up a certain way. And it's a daily practice. This is why I built this app, because your coach is great, but they're only there maybe 1 hour a week, once every 2 weeks. But you need to build an internal discipline to actually continue this inner work. Because just like you train your muscle, this is muscle memory for you. So you need the dedication if you truly want to change.
And we don't talk about this in our podcast in Mod. Normally it's about like branding and marketing and that sort of thing. I think this is probably the most metaphysical topic that we've talked about in terms of bending time and collapsing time. But we do practice it in our company. So for example, in the beginning, we were talking about doing work with clients overseas, and when we initially talked about it, we said it might take 5 years. We'll work here in the Philippines or in Asia for 3 to 5 years, then we'll go global. And then I think about a year ago, we said, what if we decided to be global today, right? Not that we had clients at the time, but we said, what if we just decided that we're a global company versus waiting to kind of struggle a little, prove it. Why are we telling ourselves it's going to take 5 years?
Completely.
Does it take 5 years? Really?
No,
really,
it really
right?
is a decision.
It's a decision.
It's all it takes. People they underestimate the power of that intention that goes behind that decision. So I love that you did that internally because it's so true. All these big companies raising huge valuations, like it comes down to the founder's belief. And it really is not something you can perform. It's just something that you exude with your energy, with the way you show up, how you speak to your people, how you speak to investors, how you speak to your customers. It's not something you can fake. So for me, making a decision with yourself that this is possible and then acting from that place and the confidence that it brings you is the hack.
Deciding today to show up as that person.
Yeah.
So in the tech industry, so tech moves fast and rewards urgency. But what you're building also asks people to slow down a bit and look inward. How do we navigate that tension with the minds that want to move so fast and are not that introspective, or who need to slow down the mind at the same time? We're really talking about time a lot here.
So actually for me, it's not so much about slowing down, because I think the industry has made it a point of meditation and that's the way of working on your mind. And that's certainly helpful. But where I'm coming from, I ask people to stop flying blind. So it's actually not much about...
Wow, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't need you to slow down. I just need you to get more clarity on what you're operating from and is it serving you? Because that doesn't necessarily need to be an hour-long session for, hours on end and weeks on end. It really becomes a daily decision that you have a control over what's going on inside there, and you have data to look at to actually tell you what's going on. Guess what? You immediately have an awareness, and then you can create this distance between stimulus and response and intervene.
Yeah.
And that's how change happens. They're microscopic decisions in your day. It's not some big moments that, breakthrough come and you show up as a different part of you. Although that does happen to some people, but most often than not, it actually is the daily small choices we make that compound. So for me, it's really helping people realize what are those internal battles that they fight, helping them map those internal conflicts, and truly, truly realize that they're not confined to their internal prisons that they've built for themselves, that there is just so much more out there to that lies ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about your background for a little bit. Where did you come from in terms of your roots? And how do you think that influenced who you are today in terms of how you lead and think?
Interesting question. I was born in Poland, and it's a beautiful country. I love the values of Polish people. I think we're hardworking, we're kind, we're very giving. And I grew up in a beautiful home, beautiful family. And I'm very grateful for that upbringing, because I think if I had a different story, I don't know that I would be able to create the company that I have with this pure intention that is behind it. So I think the way I show up is very much dictated by my childhood and the incredible values that my parents instilled in me. My mom would always tell me, instill the importance of independence and showing up for yourself regardless of your environment. You need to be on rock. And I think that alone is such a huge lesson for a woman in a world that maybe tries to sway you all the different ways. So I think for me, that was an important belief to have, to even realize I can be a solo founder, that I don't necessarily need a co-founder. I don't need, many people to make things happen. But I also took a series of teachers along the way to truly get there as a, ultimate decision point. But I think that was, I'm very grateful to have had that, because other really hard things happened to me along the way, like the passing of my loved one, that I think were formative and really shaped the trajectory of where I am today. But if it wasn't for that grounding and the family that I had, I think it would have been difficult to go through it and realize, there is this post-traumatic growth, and I can channel it towards something incredible and make it a mission-led company and help other people. I think having those foundations was really key.
That's awesome. Okay, we're going to go to some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
So, sleep data, fitness data, or cognitive data, which is the most valuable to a founder?
Oh, I think something like fitness data is just a proxy of, and actually it's just looking at how does that affect your cognitive performance, because that's really where you're operating from daily. So why not just look at the cognitive performance first? So to me, always cognitive.
Cognitive. Okay. If your future self calls you right now, what is the first thing that she would say?
Oh, she would say, whatever's meant for you will happen. So don't overthink it. You're on the right path. Trust the path and never doubt.
Love that. And what is the biggest decision that you've made so far that came from your future self?
Oh, I think it actually was to channel all of my struggle into building something that will hopefully help many, many people and leave a legacy with something that I feel proud of, to create this business that ultimately comes from an intention to instill belief and instill hope in people that might not have it for themselves. And I think also just realizing that it is all within you. You don't need an expert-led guidance all the time. We get sold so many things today about like, we need this solution, we need this therapist, this coach.
Yeah.
But actually, if you realize like the most important relationship you're building is with yourself, and truly trusting that and creating your own intuition, everything else becomes noise. So that's like something I truly want to impart on people as a message.
Yeah. So we are a personal branding agency.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about identity
Yeah, of course.
and ownership and a lot of building future identities with people. How we close a podcast is normally you'll say your name.
Okay.
And then you say, I am blank, right? So if you were to say, for example, hi, I'm Karolina and I am blank, how would you say that?
Hi, I'm Karolina and I am so worthy.
Awesome. Awesome. And for our audience, how can they find you on social media or websites, or where can they download your platform?
Yeah, so the website is www.spaceofmind.com. My personal Instagram is Karolina Komarnicka, and then Space of Mind on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Kara.
you.
And thank you guys for watching this episode. I hope you learned a lot. You can rewatch this episode because I know a lot of golden nuggets of wisdom and intelligence were shared, and I'm still processing what I've heard. And if you want to find us on modlabs.com, and you can also find us on social media at modlabs. Take care.
Thank you so much.